Hello and welcome to Owning the Narrative. I am Bulow. The show will feature the top news of the week, complete with my observations, and even a little bit of sarcasm thrown in. The top news stories will be taken from my morning news briefings that I write on the Rick Bulow New Media blog every weekday morning. If you go on to like what you see, smash that thumbs up button. And now, let's go right into the news. We are 6 days past the election, and already there are legal battles taking shape. Got this from the Associated Press. Trump, who never admits defeat, knows how to keep up fight. President Donald Trump never admits defeat, but he faces a stark choice. Now the Democrat Joe Biden has won the White House. Concede graciously for the sake of the nation or don't, and get evicted anyway. After nearly 4 tortured days of counting yielded a victory for Biden, Trump was still insisting the race is not over. He threw out baseless allegations that the election wasn't fair and illegal quote-unquote votes were counted, promised a flurry of legal action, and fired off all caps tweets falsely stating he'd won this election by a lot. While some in his circle were nudging Trump to concede graciously, many of his Republican allies, including on Capitol Hill, were egging him on, or giving him space to process his loss, at least for the time being. Trump has not lost, declared South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham in an appearance on Fox News Channel Sunday Morning Futures, rejecting the reality of the situation. Do not concede, Mr. President. Fight hard, he urged. Trump is not expected to formally concede, according to people close to him, but is likely to grudgingly vacate the White House at the end of his term. His ongoing efforts to paint the election as unfair seem both as an effort to soothe a bruised ego and to show his loyal base of supporters that he is still fighting. That could be key in keeping them engaged, energized for what comes next. He intends to fight, senior Trump economic advisor Larry Kudlow said, as it was becoming clear that the president was headed for defeat. Would Trump ever concede? I doubt it, said Trump's longtime friend and advisor Roger Stone, whose prison sentence was commuted by Trump in July. Stone asserted that Biden, as a result, will have a cloud over his presidency, with half the people in the country believing he was illegitimately elected. Allies suggested that if Trump wants to launch a media empire in coming years, he has an incentive to prolong the drama. So, too, if he intends to keep it open for a possible 2024 comeback, he would only be a year older than Biden is now. Others in his inner circle egging him on, including his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. The former New York City mayor has been promising to provide the president with evidence of voter fraud, but has produced little, including during a press conference he held Saturday in the parking lot of a small Philadelphia landscaping company next to an adult bookstore. Trump's adult sons, Donald Jr. and Eric, have also urged their father to keep fighting and challenged Republicans to stand with them, as have congressional allies like Graham. What I would tell President Trump is don't give up. My advice is do not concede, said Republican Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona in a podcast interview. Let's fight this thing, though. It's too important to give up. Some in the president's orbit have been nervously looking forward toward Capitol Hill for signs of a Republican defection, but so far most seem to be giving him time. I look forward to the president dealing with this however he needs to deal with it, Senator Roy Blunt of Missouri said Sunday on ABC's This Week. Still, he said it was time for Trump to turn this discussion over to his lawyers, time for the lawyers to make the case that they have both in court and to the American people, and then we're going to have to deal with those facts as they're presented. This has to happen, and then we move forward. At this point, we do not know who has prevailed in the election, said Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, telling Fox News he believes Trump still has a path to victory. Other political allies and White House officials, however, have pressed Trump to change his tone and commit to a smooth transition. They've emphasized to him that history will be a harsh judge of any action he takes that is seen as undermining his successor, and they have advised him to deliver a speech in the coming week pledging to support the transition. Trump's senior advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has told others that he is among those who have urged the president to accept the outcome of the race, even if Trump won't come to terms with how it was reached. At Fox News, where primetime hosts wield enormous influence over Trump, Laura Ingraham gave voice to the president's belief that the election had been unfair, while also pleading with him to keep his legacy in mind and preserve his status as a GOP kingmaker by graciously leaving office. President Trump's legacy will only become more significant if he focuses on moving the country forward, she said Thursday. The story is based on interviews with more than a dozen Trump allies and aides and allies, many of whom spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss internal discussions. That the peaceful transfer of power was even in doubt reflected the norm-shattering habits of the now lame duck president, who even in victory never admitted that he lost a popular vote in 2016. Most aides believe the president would take the weekend to decide on a plan, which will most certainly involve more legal action, but some aides believe the legal skirmishes are more about putting up the appearance of a fight than producing results. There are some indications Trump was moving in a less contentious direction, even as he continued to angrily complain to aides, reviving old grievances about the Russia investigation that began under President Barack Obama. In a statement Friday, Trump suggested he would avail himself of every avenue under the law to challenge the election's result, but allies interpreted it as a begrudging acknowledgement of the likely outcome. We will pursue this process through every aspect of the law to guarantee that the American people have confidence in our government, he said. I will never give up fighting for you and our nation. On Saturday, the White House added that the president will accept the results of a free and fair election and that the administration is following all statutory requirements. Still, there were concerns that Trump's rhetoric would inflame tensions in a nation that was already bitterly divided. Before the election, isolated scuffles were reported near tabulation centers in Philadelphia and Phoenix. Pro-Trump protesters, some of them openly carrying rifles and handguns, have rallied outside tallying facilities in several cities around the country, responding to Trump's groundless accusations that the Democrats were trying to steal the White House. Biden, meanwhile, has called on the nation to come together. For those of you who voted for President Trump, I understand the disappointment tonight. I've lost a couple of times myself. But now let's give each other a chance, he said in his Saturday night victory speech. Trump, whose voluminous Twitter account seems to provide an apt entry for any occasion, offered this advice in 2016. Vladimir Putin said today about Hillary and Dems, in my opinion, it is humiliating. One must be able to lose with dignity, so true. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see just what happens come this week, throughout the weeks and days to come. However, one thing that is a major definite for Trump is he is planning to revive the campaign style rallies as he continues to pursue legal challenges to the election results. This coming from foxnews.com. President Trump is planning to bring back his large-scale rallies that were a hallmark of his presidential run, but these will be focused on his quote-unquote ongoing litigation as he challenges the results of last week's election, Fox News has told. According to a report by Axios and confirmed by Fox News, Trump's campaign plans to take a less traditional path to challenging the results of the election, including holding a series of Trump rallies focused on the campaign's ongoing legal efforts in numerous states across the country. But a top Trump campaign official said on Monday, after the results surfaced, said that there were no plans for the president himself. There is currently no plan for the president to hold rallies. There would be these would be grassroots events similar to the boat parades, not presidential rallies, the official said. Along with the rallies, Trump is also planning to use obituaries of people who allegedly voted, but are actually dead as evidence of the voter fraud he's been claiming. The campaign is also sending recount teams to Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania with Representative Doug Collins, Republican Georgia, heading up the effort in the Peach State. Trump has promised legal action in the coming days as he refused to concede his loss to Biden. making an aggressive pitch for donors to help finance any court fight. Trump and his campaign have leveled accusations of large-scale voter fraud in Pennsylvania and other states that broke for Biden, so far without proof. Despite these efforts, Trump aides and allies have acknowledged privately the legal fights would, at best, forestall the inevitable, and some had deep reservations about the president's attempts to undermine faith in the vote. But they said Trump and a core group of allies were aiming to keep his loyal base of supporters on his side even in defeat. There has never been a presidential election in memory where such widespread conspiratorial fraud was alleged. Moments after the AP called the race for Biden, Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani stood in front of a campaign banner taped over the garage door of a landscaping company in Philadelphia, wedged near a cremation center and an adult bookstore called Fantasy Island, with a handful of poll watchers, and declared they had been kept too far away to check for any inaccuracies. Something fishy was going on, he said. We have no way of knowing because we've been deprived of the right to inspect ballots, he said. On Fox News' Sunday Morning Futures Sunday, Giuliani said 2 additional lawsuits were in the process of being drafted, in addition to existing litigation in Pennsylvania. By the end of this week, Giuliani predicted the campaign would have filed 4 or 5 lawsuits, with a total of 10 possible. Republican lawyers planned a Monday news conference to announce additional litigation. Voter fraud is extremely rare, and when it does happen, people are generally caught and prosecuted, and it does not change the outcome of the election. Typically, it involves someone wanting to honor the wishes of a loved one who recently died and either knowingly or not commits a crime by filling out that ballot. Trump campaign officials have also alleged that more than 21,000 had been cast in the name of the dead in Pennsylvania. The claims stem from a conservative legal group's lawsuit against the Pennsylvania Secretary of State, accusing her of wrongly including some 21,000 supposedly dead residents on voter rolls. The federal judge who has a case, John Jones, said he was doubtful of the claims. He said the Public Interest Legal Foundation that brought the claims was asking the court to accept that there were dead people on voter rolls, and he asked for proof and questioned why they waited until the 11th hour, quote unquote, to file suit. Trump's own administration has pushed back against the claims of widespread voter fraud and illegal voting, though it didn't mention Trump was the one making the allegations. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the federal agency that oversees U.S. election security, also noted that election or local election offices have detection measures that make it highly difficult to commit fraud through counterfeit ballots. Top election officials in the battleground states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Nevada, both Republican and Democrat, have all said that they see no widespread voting irregularities, no major instances of fraud or illegal activity. Yeah, that's highly plausible, but I don't know I don't know what's going to come of it, but we do have this little bitty from Sarah Lee over at Red State speaking on it even more. And she says from Wisconsin to Nevada to Pennsylvania to Georgia, Trump's 2020 election legal challenge starts to take shape. It's unclear if the point on the 2020 election timeline has been reached that allows for serious discussion of legal challenges around what the Trump camp said is suggesting looks like widespread fraud. Too early in the newly gracious and delicate media, we'll revert back to hurling invective, painting those giving such insane notions quarter as mad and pathologically incapable of just letting a legitimate loss go. But the Trump administration's legal challenge, and his legal team has shown amazing resolve in revealing only little bits here and there, is starting to take shape, and it could put as many as 94 electoral college votes in play by some estimates. So here's to risking the smear. There are many angles the Trump administration could take based on anecdotal reports out of many states. In Michigan and Georgia, there were problems with glitches in the vote counting software. Dominion, used in 28 states, has its own interesting history I won't get into here. except it's saying 2010 that it brought the software named in a federal investigation into the 2004 recall election of Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. It should be noted the Michigan county in question is disputing Dominion, used in almost all of the Michigan counties, was the source of the glitch. Georgia, however, has 4 counties that experienced some kind of tech glitch: Spalding and Morgan counties, Gwinnett, which led to a delay at counting absentee ballots, and Fulton, which led to people being asked to fill out provisional ballots. Fulton has also indicated a problem with their vote count reporting, leading to a rescanning of some ballots. Then there's Nevada, where a whistleblower has come forward indicating he has witnessed illegal ballots being counted. In Wisconsin, poll workers may have alerted thousands of absentee ballots by violation of the law, and get this, they made their illegal corrections in easily traceable red pen. And there's a statement that says, in defiance of and direct contradiction to the statute, the Wisconsin Elections Commission gave guidance that is covered to all 72 county clerks and turned the statute on its head. Gableman said, they said, gee, we know the law says an absentee ballot without the witness address is not valid, but county clerk, you have a duty to go ahead and look up on your own the witness's address if there is no address on the absentee ballot. Anticipating a legal challenge to the seemingly high unlawful advice, the WEC instructed clerks to write in these witness addresses in red pen so that they would be easy to find during a recount or audit of the vote. The Republican Party of Wisconsin estimates that thousands of witness addresses may have been changed, thus invalidating the ballots on which they appeared. The statutory remedy for this is to subtract a commensurate number of votes for the candidates for whom those ballots were cast, meaning that vote totals may substantially change. Adding to all that, it was announced Friday the Trump administration was bringing a lawsuit over ballot handling in Arizona, and SCOTUS has already involved itself in the Pennsylvania legal challenge. Additionally, more new lawsuits are set to be filed Monday in both Pennsylvania and Nevada. What this means is that there is a lot of lawsuits over the 2020 election. One Twitter user created a handy map, and while I can't verify outstanding legal challenges, mean those states can certify electoral votes, it seems at least plausible that they couldn't until those lawsuits were resolved. I welcome any thoughts on that in the comments. David John Weaver tweeted out Nevada with a map, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia with a map, recount request in Wisconsin with a map. North Carolina will not announce until November 13, 2020 with the map. So tuck in, folks. The next few weeks are going to be a public relations battle that, almost unbelievably, with all we've seen through his nation over the last 4 years of Russian collusion hoaxes and white supremacist slander, we've not seen before. Biden and most of the media will be demanding Trump concede. If Trump holds out, which it looks like he means to do so until he's satisfied he lost fairly, we can expect to see the midnight rioting again, unfortunately. Now, Trump's side, however, is playing their poker hand quite close to the vest, a strategy likely to help them during the coming PR war. Ron Coleman, an attorney tapped to work on Trump's legal challenge in Pennsylvania, does, however, divulge what he can on Twitter, and he's worth a follow for sure. He likes to tease with compelling little nuggets like this frequently. No, I was there. This is beyond smoking guns, and they're going into legal documents. There was a tweet from Ron Coleman yesterday. Anyone that believed the 2020 election was over when Biden, with the help of the mainstream press, pulled a Napoleon and crowned himself is surely questioning that belief as the days wear on, and they are questioning it whether they are willing to admit it to themselves or anyone else. Now, should all of these recounts be legitimate, and should the election be overturned? It is up to, it might go to to Congress and to the House of Representatives, who, who according to the 12th Amendment to the Constitution, selects the president, and the vice president is selected by the Senate. Now, interestingly enough, with the House, and here's an article from American Thinker that bears it out. New election math, it's not 270, it's 26 to 24. James Madison's, Alexander Hamilton's, and certainly Ben Franklin's ghosts are laughing as their genius in founding the Electoral College is likely to be vindicated. We have a generation born to an age where civics is no longer taught. Millions of Americans do not know the difference between a representative and a senator, and many think the Electoral College is a land-grant school west of Omaha. They're about to get that civics lesson left out of curricula. Trump's legacy is the opening of the political system to millions who never voted before, minorities who for the first time broke Republican, and more women Republican representatives in Congress. The deplorables may not have understood raw political power, leftist manipulation via vote fraud conveniently covered by the media and big tech, but they appear to get it now. The Democrats way overplay their fraud hand. Scores of bloggers are publishing lists of the dead vote. Statistical algorithms used to identify voter fraud in third world countries applied to this vote show massive fraud. It is only going to get uglier every day as more people come forward with fraud testimony, photos of trucks delivering ballots, and records of software that stops in the middle of the night. The mainstream media and big tech almost unanimously deliver the message that Biden won. It's time to come together. Let's move on. Now that would have worked before, but it's not going to work now. It's not going to work because Donald Trump is not just a president. As others have said, he is quote unquote our champion. That changes the equation to one of a cause rather than an election. There is no quote unquote coming together when there is a cause. Not after this kind of raw bare fraud. No compromise here. That dynamic plus Trump's fight it out every day mentality is pretty hard to beat. So what's next? Vote fraud on the scale seen this week can hardly be quantified between today and when the Electoral College casts its vote. Lawsuits take time. Discovery is slow. We cannot trust our own Justice Department, the FBI, and intelligence community who have been implicated trying to destroy the current president. There is legal proof and common sense proof. Legal proof may take a bit, but the common sense measurement showing massive fraud is off the charts, and it's only 5 days after the election. There is plenty more to come. Biden is at 290 Electoral College votes, with the 20 from Pennsylvania looking wobbly late daily, as even the Pennsylvania legislature has begun hearings. The Supreme Court is pretty much on record that those 20 are far from in the bag. The fights in Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, Minnesota, and other states go on. Most, perhaps all of the states in question have Republican legislatures, both houses. Many state legislators are the firm team waiting for that shot at Congress or becoming a governor or attorney general. They are the politicians, and politicians of any party always have an eye on the next prize. Then there is MAGA Nation, 71 million voters who are about to get a civics lesson that their state legislators can certify this obvious electoral fraud by certifying the current fraudulent vote, or they can put in their own electors, or they can just choose to sit it out. But there is another step. Let's go there. America was here before. It was Rutherford B. Hayes against Samuel Tilden. Nobody had enough electoral college votes, so it went to the Congress to decide. The history of what happened is interesting. State legislators in 7 or 8 key states, not the court, not the governor, choose the electors. When the deplorables learned that the guy next door, who was a state rep, or their insurance agent, who was a state senator, certifies this election fraud, do you think they might just make a call? Republican legislatures are inhabited by many of the same craven political hacks who then move on to Congress. They care about only one thing, getting elected. Now, it is rumored that archaeologists tested bones of 18th century politicians to see exactly when and where the courage gene was eliminated from their genome sequence. They believe it may not have ever existed. State legislatures in 6 or 7 or more states One bad Republicans have a choice: certify an election that was clearly fraudulent, certify a different state of electors who will vote against a popular but fraudulent vote, or just fail to certify. My bet is several may choose option 3. If even one state or two fail to certify, the election goes to Congress. What Republican state legislature wants to see MAGA Nation pillory them with is Jack's vote put Joe Biden in office, the thousands of Trump rally attendees in Butler, Pennsylvania, acting in one voice, calling state reps and senators. Just think of what fun that would be. Big media, big tech, Facebook, none of it matters to that anonymous state rep or state senator. They're painfully visible to their constituents. They see their voters daily at the grocery store and church at the Kiwanis Club. Now, it's said that all politics is local. Well, it just got very local for this presidential election, and there were unlikely to be many state reps or state senators who want to have 71 million MAGA Nation deplorables targeting them. Why not let Congress decide? The legislator can be a hero to his or her constituents while they dodge a certain electoral bullet in the next election. Congress gets a vote. One state, one vote. Wyoming and California, each one vote. Pretty fast, the new election math goes from 270 path to victory to 2624, and Trump wins. Now, that is a very interesting concept. I think not only Hayes versus Tilden, but I think it was 1800, which ultimately led to the 12th Amendment to the Constitution. And in 1824, I believe, was also the other time in which the Congress voted for the president. I may have to take a look into that, but, like I said, we shall find out what will happen in the days and weeks and probably months to come. And I'll be here giving you the blow-by-blow action. We are exactly 1 week from the election, and things are still up in the air, even though the media had called Joe Biden as president-elect. But the media should not have done that, as this race is not over yet. Got this from Andy Puzder over at Real Clear Politics. Says the media should not have called this election. Joe Biden has made it clear that he will do his best to quote-unquote unify the country following an election in which more than 71 million Americans, nearly half the electorate, voted for Donald Trump. It is an admirable goal, but any chance of that happening depends on the American people having confidence that his election outcome resulted from a fair and honest process. Though never perfect, our electoral system has generally instilled confidence for the past 231 years, which is why it has worked so well. Under the contentious circumstances of this election, the traditional media's decision to declare a winner before the official process had run its course has diminished the confidence of Trump voters in the announced result. Even if the declaration of a Biden victory is found to be accurate, the call was premature, and it will make the effort to unify our nation far more difficult. Like millions of voters from both sides of the political aisle, I'm sensitive to the need for a definitive election outcome, untainted by irregularities or allegations of fraud. Even with razor-thin margins separating the two candidates in key states, we should be able to arrive at a final result that both sides can accept. President Trump is contesting the purported results in those states where the race is close, and the conduct of election officials and the processes used appear suspicious. He is clearly within his rights to contest the results. His supporters generally want him to do so. Allowing the legal process to run its course is the only way to foster the unity Biden seeks. Now, unity is much less likely, however, when the media simply declares a winner before the matter is resolved. In 2012, many Republicans felt disappointed when Mitt Romney lost to President Obama. Few felt cheated. That will not be the case in 2020 if the current president's supporters believe that the media preempted the official process so as to disparage or prevent a full investigation of the president's claims. The New York Times exacerbated this problem when it announced in a not-election day tweet later withdrawn that, quote-unquote, the role of declaring a winner of the presidential election in the U.S. falls to the news media. Of course it does not. That responsibility falls on Congress. But that tweet told the president's supporters all they needed to know about the media's intent. Voters who supported Trump have good reason to distrust the media. For months, traditional news outlets have been telling us that he would lose his bid for a re-election in a landslide, and that a quote-unquote blue wave would sweep the nation, turning control of Capitol Hill completely over to the Democrats. Reporters, not just pundits, but ostensibly fair-minded straight news professionals, treated Biden's decisive victory as a foregone conclusion, actively discouraging their readers and viewers from even considering the possibility of a second Trump term. The pollsters had fixed the flaws that plagued their results in 2016, we were told. Now the election results proved otherwise, but yet these same outlets are now asking us to trust them as they declare that their favorite candidate won the election. The media bias against Republicans in general and Trump in particular is certainly not of a recent vintage. The multi-year Russian collusion debacle exposed the lengths to which some media outlets were willing to go to tarnish his reputation, and the stunning failure on the part of reports, pundits, expert commentators, elected officials, and media executives to acknowledge their bias and their errors, let alone apologize for their roles in spreading roundly debunked information, cast the motivations of those outlets in a harsh light. Now, how can the president's supporters trust people who misled them for years and then refuse to acknowledge fault when the truth was exposed? With nearly half the electorate now wondering if voting even matters, the media's rush to judgment has done a great disservice to the goal of unifying our nation. If America is to have any hope of healing the wounds inflicted by years of intense and divisive partisanship, then the media would be well advised to leave it to the proper authorities to declare the outcome of this election and stop attempting to force a premature judgment on willing voters. And that is true. I mean, we have a media that Andrew Breitbart had exposed, James O'Keefe is exposing, and basically just on the side of those who are against America. I mean, classic case in point is during the Tea Party, when there have been many cases of people biting the fingers of Tea Party supporters, the N-word being tossed around to a liberal congressman, supposedly. Yet, as Andrew Breitbart said, there were many cell phones, there were many digital cameras around. We have a sea of new media that are capturing the lies. I mean, as Andrew Breitbart said, the new media is taking over where the old media failed. I see this as more or less Alinsky versus Breitbart. I'll get into that in other videos, but the main thing, and the thing that I always say, in a world of Saul Alinskys, be an Andrew Breitbart. And I said that the election isn't over yet. We got this from the American Spectator. It's a pretty long article, so I'll read just a couple of paragraphs of it. But it's not over yet. By Doug Fisher, not only has Nancy Pelosi crowned Joe Biden president-elect, but so has Fox News. The other news outlets have been crowning him for weeks. The other night, several Fox News reporters started using that term, but of course the election is not over. Rather, it is in litigation. Time is stopped. That is how the law works. Or in the treatise of Yogi Berra's memes, it ain't over till it's over. Seriously, imagine Joe owes Don $10,000 under the terms of a contract. Don comes to collect, but Joe proactively files a lawsuit seeking equitable relief, claiming that he does not owe the money, that an underlying contract was invalid because of the statute of frauds or a lack of consideration or mistake or fraud or whatever the legal basis can nullify a contract. Well, it goes into litigation and no one owes the money until the litigation pays out. The November 3 presidential election is now in litigation. Once a complex matter goes into litigation, one never knows what may emerge. Ultimate outcomes often differ from initial expectations. I began my own litigation practice at Jones Day in 1994. I was new to the field after 10 years practicing as a congregational rabbi, teaching of Talmud and biblical studies, a hospital and police department chaplain, and an organizational executive. Early on in that new litigation career, I was handed a terribly difficult case to defend. It was quite a bit of responsibility dumped onto my shoulders, being asked to defend an ostensibly indefensible case. My client was one of the three main national credit reporting companies. According to the complainer, credit reporting failures had caused the plaintiff to lose her six-figure salary, relegating her to a life of misery and poverty, forcing her to move from her big home in a big city to a different kind of home in a smaller city in a lower cost state. I read the complaint and it seemed we had caused terrible misery. We had no chance. All the facts seemingly were against us, hopeless. He went on to say that he had won the case. And disregarding her assertions and her court papers, he conducted his own research. And it said that, along the way of uncovering the true facts, it also turned out that the reason she had moved from the big city to the new state in a smaller city had nothing to do with anything in the lawsuit. Rather, having collected megabucks on a prior sexual harassment claim, she decided she was now rich enough to leave the workforce for life, and she proceeded to marry a multimillionaire who owned a factory in an out-of-state small town, so moved there. Interesting what some fact investigations turn up. And he went on to speak about another lawsuit and what he learned from those two cases, one an impossible defense, the other an impossible series of claims, is that it isn't over until it's over, and no experienced attorney can or should blow off others' claims too quickly. Lots of impossible to believe claims prove to be bogus, and lots of others prove to be incredibly true. You just have to follow the evidence and see where the facts lead. It often is interesting what some fact investigations turn up. If I had told you a few weeks ago what the former CNN chief legal analyst does at his Zoom desktop computer during a 5-minute break, who would have believed it? So don't be intimidated by cable news panel discussions when the CNN masturbator or masturbator tells Americans that a fact investigation needs to be stopped, quote unquote, for the good of the country because, quote unquote, all suspicions are yet unproven. If there is nothing to fear from the investigation, welcome it. Otherwise, buckle up for the ride. And he says all this is why he's been so appalled listening to the Chris Christie's questioning the viability of the Trump team's litigation efforts now to get to the bottom of the election results. None of us knows yet what facts will turn up or what the courts will decide. We already know that 6,000 votes switched between Republican and Democrat in one single Michigan county because of a computer software glitch. We know that the same software program was used in 47 different Michigan counties for this election. We know that the same software was used in several other states. That alone justifies further scrutiny. The left media are in a rush to crown Biden president-elect. You can't blame them. That speed makes sense. Their hope is to steamroll a fait accompli that runs roughshod over the Trump team's litigation efforts. Before they gain traction, the left media hope that a national outcry can be generated to stop the litigation. A public shaming under the rubric of please don't do this, you're hurting the country. Now is a time to heal. And it goes on to say that There is too much at stake in the 2020 presidential election, and there's strong enough personality in Donald Trump at the helm of the Republican challenge to be cowed by media efforts to intimidate or shame the Trump team's litigation efforts. Historically, the media have succeeded in shaming the 1960 Richard Nixons and 2008 Norm Coleman's into backing down, quote unquote, for the good of the country. It reeks of Dick Durbin urging Justice Brett Kavanaugh to step aside for a while for the good of the country to allow the FBI to investigate longer and slower investigations of every defamation against him to slow down the Supreme Court confirmation process. The thing is, we know now, as we've always known, but never more clearly, that the left media are corrupt and are neither themselves driven by the good of the country nor by healing. Rather, they grab at power at all costs. With the left media, left alliance, with the Democrat media, left alliance having proven wrong so often on so many other Trump matters during these past 4 years of the resistance, there is no reason to allow the perspective to influence Trump team litigation strategy. There was no Russian collusion, there was no Zelensky quid pro quo, and there is no reason to back down now while the Trump team pursues America's first and long overdue intensive post-election fact investigation arising from a tight mass mailing electoral showdown. It's often interesting to see what some fact investigations turn up. Let's see. Yes, indeed. I mean, it's interesting to see just what will happen and what comes out of it. I mean, you, there are some that are throwing their hands up, and I admit I've been thinking about that a couple of times, but you know, it's interesting to see just what pops up or crops up, so to speak. As a matter of fact, Lindsey Graham had mentioned possible ballot harvesting in Pennsylvania. Got this from the Washington Examiner. Lindsey Graham, possible ballot harvesting in Pennsylvania involving 25,000 nursing home residents. Senator Lindsey Graham said on Monday he has learned about potential ballot harvesting in Pennsylvania nursing homes. The chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee revealed that there were up to 25,000 cases that are being looked at as Pennsylvania remains a state President Trump's team hopes to turn its way after major media outlets called it for his Democrat opponent, Joe Biden, giving him enough electoral votes to secure the presidency. I've got more information. We are now finding potentially that 25,000 nursing home residents in different nursing homes requested mail-in ballots at the exact same time. The South Carolina Republican said on Fox News, "You can't ballot harvest in Pennsylvania," Graham added. "What are the odds that 25,000 people in different locations of the same age group requested at the same time a ballot? Somebody is up to no good in these nursing homes." Graham did not provide any evidence, but he did allude to critics of Trump for refusing to concede the election as he awaits legal challenges and recounts to play out. "We don't need the permission to look into these allegations. We owe it to those who voted for President Trump and the country at large to test the system. If we don't do it with voting by mail in 2020, we will never win the White House again," he said. Trump currently trails Biden by about 45,000 votes. There are roughly 700 nursing facilities and 1,200 personal care homes in Pennsylvania, according to a Philadelphia Inquirer report last month on concerns about disenfranchisement of older voters during the coronavirus pandemic. As Graham mentioned, ballot collection is illegal in the swing state. The Trump campaign lost a legal effort to ban drop boxes. Graham has called for a Justice Department investigation into voting irregularities after receiving a sworn affidavit from a Pennsylvania postal worker alleging that postal supervisory officials hatched a plan to backdate ballots mailed after the election. You know, if if that's happened in one state, just imagine what's happening in other states. I just wonder what's going to happen in other states. And finishing this off, there are a couple of Senate races still up for grabs, and one that had already been finished. And Tom Tillis kept his seat in North Carolina. Speaking of the Senate, we have Joe Manchin. I guess you would call him a blue dog Democrat, saying that he's going to oppose eliminating the filibuster and expanding the Supreme Court. Got this from Roll Call. Joe Manchin kills dreams of expanding filibuster or expanding Supreme Court and eliminating the filibuster. Democrats have a shot at Senate control with Vice President breaking ties. West Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin III wants to make clear that he will not be the 50th vote in favor of eliminating the legislative filibuster or expanding the size of the Supreme Court in a potential 50-50 Senate. Democrats still have a narrow path to a Senate victory if they are able to prevail in two January runoff elections in Georgia, assuming Republicans currently leading in North Carolina and Alaska win. But in a move that seems fairly designed to interfere with GOP talking points about the risks of a unified Democratic government, Manchin appeared Monday on Fox News to declare that several progressive policies I commit to you tonight, and I commit to all your viewers and everyone else that's watching. I want to allay those fears. I want to rest those fears for you right now because when they talk about whether it be packing the courts or ending the filibuster, I will not vote to do that, Manchin said in the interview. I will not vote to pack the courts, and I will not vote to end the filibuster. Manchin said in his estimation, efforts to defund the police and advance, quote unquote, Medicare for All lack support among members of the Senate Democrat Conference as well. We got to fix the Affordable Care Act. Manchin said the evening before the Supreme Court takes up a key challenge to the health care law of a decade ago. I think our moderate Republicans will work with us and now repair what needs to be repaired while not conceding that President Trump lost. Georgia Republicans David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler are appealing for support in their Senate runoff campaigns by saying they are the quote-unquote last line of defense against a parade of horrors associated with the government helmed by President-elect Joe Biden, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and a potential Majority Leader Charles E. Schumer. Perdue and Loeffler face runoff elections on January 5th against Democrat challengers Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, respectively. Both Ossoff and Warnock are certain to continue to face questions about their personal positions on priorities promoted by their party's left flank, but Manchin's commitment can turn down the heat. Manchin said moderates should be able to trust that he can keep his word and not give in to pressure from Schumer, citing his vote in favor of Supreme Court Justice Brett M. Kavanaugh. If I can take that type of pressure, if I can vote for Brett Kavanaugh, the only Democrat, if I can take that type of pressure, you don't think that I can possibly justify what I'm about to be doing and how I'm going to vote, knowing that I'm sitting in the seat that Robert C. Byrd held, who wrote the rules of the Senate, he said. Manchin's remarks Monday come as House Democrats are trying to figure out the best path forward after facing the unexpected prospect of a smaller majority in the next Congress, and many Republicans on Capitol Hill are not yet acknowledging that Biden has been elected president. Now, much to the chagrin of environmental activists, Trump or Manchin could chair the Energy and Natural Committees Resources Committee in a 50-50 Senate, in which the tie goes to the Democrats, thanks to Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. When you're talking about basically Green New Deal and all this single quote-unquote socialism, that's not who we are as a Democrat Party. It's not how I was raised in West Virginia, Manchin said Monday. It's not the Democrats I know. And that's so very true. I mean, you know, the Democrat Party of today is not like it was when JFK and Harry Truman were president. You know, I mean, things the, the, to me the Democrats had just lost their way. You know, I mean, they're leaning way too far to the left. You know, I mean, many people say this is not your grandma's Democrat Party. Many people are seeing that now, and that's why many people are walking away. We are 8 days past the election, and there's some media outlets that had pulled back their call on Biden being president, and there are still some votes being counted and lawsuits being waged. Got this from the Washington Free Beacon. Trump's election lawsuits, a state-by-state guide, Washington Free Beacon. A little long, so I might just highlight the states here. President Donald Trump is gearing up for post-election lawfare after a host of media outlets called the presidential race for Joe Biden on Saturday. The Washington Free Beacon will track Trump's legal efforts state by state and update this story as new information becomes available. Biden leads in critical battlegrounds like Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and it's not clear how Trump might erase those margins by litigation. An initial wave of lawsuits quickly fizzled last week as vote counters around the country tabulated results, though the campaign may ask for recounts and seek court orders establishing procedures for that process. In Arizona, it's a Donald J. Trump for president versus Hobbs in the Superior Court for the state of Arizona. It says in Maricopa County, the Trump campaign sued the Arizona Secretary of State and a handful of local election officials on November 7, alleging that quote-unquote potentially thousands of votes were wrongly rejected by poll workers who failed to follow proper procedures. Vote machines in Maricopa County will reject votes that include splotches, stray marks, or multiple marks in the same race. The machine will display an alert and eject ballots if it detects such defects. And it also says here that the voter and observer complaints attached to the report or to the lawsuit revolve around the use of Sharpies to mark ballots, while internet claims assert that ballots filled out by Sharpie can't be counted in Arizona. Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich, Republican, looked into the matter and said he satisfied those conditions are false. Says here Biden is ahead of Trump by about 15,000 votes in Arizona. Georgia, in regards to enforcement of election laws in the Eastern Judicial Circuit of Georgia, Trump lawyers filed a lawsuit in Deep Blue, Chatham County on November 4 after Republican election officials raised concerns that a poll worker commingled about 50 tardy mail-in ballots with legitimate votes. Mail-in votes were due at 7 p.m. on Election Day in Georgia. The Trump campaign asked the state court judge for an order requiring officials to segregate tardy ballots from all other votes. At an emergency hearing, the top election official testified that he inspected each of the 50 contested ballots and confirmed they were received on time. The matter was dismissed shortly thereafter. And it says Biden currently leads Trump by about 12,000 votes in Georgia. Gabriel Sterling, a top elections administrator for the state, vigorously defended Georgia's process in a November 9 press conference. We are going to find people who try to illegally vote. Is it 10,353? Unlikely, Sterling said. And there are two, or there are two cases in Michigan, both Donald J. Trump for president versus Benson. One is in the Michigan Court of Claims, the other in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Michigan. The Trump campaign is litigating two challenges in Michigan. The first is in federal court and mostly concerns the procedures for counting votes at a canvassing center in Detroit. The second is in state court and involves similar claims. One challenger, called Andrew Miller, said in an affidavit that he was repeatedly blocked from observing a ballot duplication process in which vote counters faithfully transcribed the marks on a ballot rejected by a machine under a fresh ballot. Under Michigan law, this process must be conducted by a bipartisan team. Miller also said poll workers failed to properly document his challenges. Another, Kathleen David-Tila, is a pregnant woman who voluntarily left the canvassing because of the alleged hostility of vote counters and Democrat observers made her feel fear for her safety. The lawsuit asks for an order that delays certification of the results, grants Republicans access to surveillance video of ballot drop boxes, and directs Detroit vote counters to exclude fraudulent votes, among other things. The case was assigned to U.S. District Judge Robert Junker and Michigan Court of Claims Judge Cynthia Stevens tossed the cases to stop the tabulation of absentee ballots across the state. And for several reasons, Stevens said the suit had come too late, that the campaign was suing the wrong defendants, and that it lacked sufficient evidence for its claims. Trump lawyers are appealing the decision. Biden needs Trump by about 150,000 votes in the state. In Nevada, it's Stock versus Sagovsky in the U.S. District Court for the District of Nevada. And GOP lawyers in Nevada raised procedural concerns about observer access and scrutiny of absentee ballots in Clark County, where about 70% of Nevada voters reside. A lawsuit filed in federal court sought to immediately halt the use of an electronic signature verification software in favor of a manual review of mail-in ballots. U.S. District Judge Andrew Gordon denied the GOP request during a hearing on November 6. Gordon noted that the dispute over Clark County's verification software is being litigated at the Supreme Court of Nevada, though he seems to think the software was compatible with Nevada's election rules. He said the issue arises under state law and is best resolved in state court. And it goes on to say Biden is ahead of Trump in Nevada by about 35,000 votes. The deadline to finish the Nevada canvass is November 16. And there's a multi-front effort in the Keystone State. One is Republican Party of Pennsylvania versus Kathy Buckrar in the Supreme Court. Another one in the Supreme Court is in regards to canvassing observation. And Trump for president versus Kathy Buckrar is also in the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. Says first, the campaign is seeking to take over a lawsuit in the U.S. Supreme Court involving the validity of mail-in ballots that arrived after Election Day. The state Supreme Court said any mail-in ballot that arrived by Friday, November 6th should be counted. The Trump campaign and Pennsylvania Republicans say the deadline set by the state legislature, 8 p.m. on Election Day, ought to be the cutoff. Over the weekend, an order from the High Court provided that ballots arriving after Election Day should be kept separate from all of the votes, as they are the subject of ongoing litigation. The next step in that case is for the judges or justices to decide whether the Trump campaign will serve as the plaintiff. It's possible that the court will never resolve the lawsuit, as late arriving mail-in votes may not be decisive to the outcome in Pennsylvania, where Biden currently leads by almost 50,000 votes. Second, the campaign fought first in state and then in federal court over the rules for observers in the Philadelphia Canvassing Center. Events in Philadelphia have been at the center of conservative election fraud anxiety, as hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots from southeastern Pennsylvania tipped the state into the Biden column after Trump prevailed among Election Day voters. A Pennsylvania appeals court sided with Trump on November 5th, saying election law requires vote counters to give Trump watchers some observational leeway to ascertain sufficient details of the canvassing process. And it says that the campaign sued Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Buckrar after she gave voters until November 12 to confirm their identities if mail-in ballots were returned without proper proof of identification. The original deadline was November 9. The judge said she would rule on Buckrar's move later, but for now, any voter who returns ID information between November 10 and November 12 will have their votes set aside. Pennsylvania Republicans are litigating several other controversies with which the president's campaign is not involved. And I mean, it's interesting how it is, but I mean, there wasn't this much lawsuit at least this early during the 2000 election. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, it took place, like like around like about 2 to 3 weeks after election day. I mean, I'm just I'm just trying to remember that, but could be wrong. But if I am, my memory back then isn't as good as it is now. But got this from Deseret News, and it's another lengthy article, so I'll just highlight some of it. Claims of massive ballot counting abuse examined. American voters have decided that President Donald Trump will not be reelected, but legal challenges remain in several battleground states. The president has refused to concede his projected loss, despite congratulations from world leaders coming to Democrat Joe Biden, now addressing the nation, quote unquote, from the office of the president-elect in daily comments. On Saturday, media outlets projected that President-elect Joe Biden would defeat the incumbent president, and vote counts continue to back up their prediction, despite the president's own declaration that we will win. As foreshadowed by the president on election day, Trump's campaign has pursued election-related legal actions, while the president insists that massive ballot counting abuse is occurring in the wake of the election, without providing evidence of such abuse. And the article goes on to pretty much state a couple of issues in Pennsylvania. There's ballot count observers. The day after the election, the president alleged that election officials in Pennsylvania, quote unquote, won't allow legal observers to watch the ballot counting process, and that counting should be stopped, but that is not stopped. Votes there from being counted, and President-elect Biden is projected to win the state. And it says that a non-zero number of people have been allowed in the room to observe, the one attorney said. And there's also the issue of mail-in and cure ballots. Because of the pandemic, there have been a record number of mail-in ballots that have required new and experienced voters to adapt their voting habits when there is a mistake in filling out a ballot or the envelope used to mail the ballot. Election officials attempt to cure the ballot by notifying the voter that his signature doesn't match that on file, or that there has been another issue. On Monday, the Trump campaign sued Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Hochul, the state official who oversees elections, and 7 Democrat-heavy counties for various practices, including decisions by some counties to notify voters whose mail-in ballots appeared to be packaged incorrectly of that fact so that they could cure their ballot or seek to cast a new one, Politico reported. And it goes on to say that in October, the U.S. Supreme Court decided not to take up the GOP's case, saying it was too close to the election, but left themselves an opportunity to take up the case later, the New York Times reported. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito did require Pennsylvania election officials to separate ballots that arrived after the election and to not include the votes in announced vote totals. According to the Times, even though state election officials were already segregating the ballots, and it says that according to an ABC News tally, Biden maintained a more than 45,000 vote lead over the president. And in Nevada, it said a lawsuit wanted U.S. District Judge Andrew Gordon to order a ban on the use of a machine for verifying purposes or verifying signatures, but that the judge told the plaintiffs to return to court if they found more evidence to back their claims. Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes, who was just reelected, alleged in a statement to Deseret News Monday that some voting mistakes in Nevada may have been made innocently, while others appeared more intentional. Reyes, who spent this weekend volunteering his personal leave time in Nevada reviewing election issues, did not provide any specifics of those mistakes in his statement. According to ABC News, Biden is projected to win Nevada by more than 35,000 votes. Arizona, we have Sharpiegate, and an election night viral video from Arizona claimed inaccurately The ballots filled out with the felt-tipped Sharpie were not being counted, which led thousands of protesters to show up to the polling station. The hashtag SharpieGate went viral on social media in the wake of the misinformation. Officials from Maricopa County, Arizona, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security each released messages that the use of a Sharpie would not invalidate a ballot, and that the felt tip pens were even recommended by the ballot manufacturing because they provide the fastest drying ink. It says the Arizona Republic reported that the controversy had not stopped ballot counting there. And according to ABC News, Biden maintains a nearly 15,000 vote lead in Arizona. In Georgia, a Chatham County judge, the seat of Savannah, throughout a case Thursday where the Trump campaign requested that absentee ballots arriving post-poll closure be separated from other ballots. According to the Post, for mail-in ballot to count in Georgia, it needs to arrive before polls close on Election Day, with exceptions for ballots from service members and overseas Georgians. The day prior, the GOP submitted an affidavit by a poll worker alleging ballots that arrived late were added to other timely ballots, while Democrats submitted a pair of statements from poll workers that said it had not observed intermingling, wrote the Post. The presidential race in Georgia remains narrow, with ABC News reporting Biden leading with upwards of 12,000 votes. And in Michigan, Republican lawyers lost two cases in Michigan, similar to that in Georgia, where they were unable to provide evidence of voting or ballot irregularities, the Washington Post reported. In the first case, a judge dismissed Republicans' allegations that election workers had inappropriately carried ballots in Detroit as mere speculation. And in the second case, a GOP election observer who alleged ballot mishandling was unable to provide any proof of wrongdoing, according to the Post. Michigan was one of the states Biden flipped since the 2016 presidential election and surpassed Trump there by nearly 150,000 votes, says ABC News. And yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff along with that, and you know, should the president concede the election? Strafe had a very interesting piece in Red State saying no. And it says right now the Trump campaign is engaged in a no-holds-barred legal struggle for the presidency and for the fate of our nation, while on election night, President Trump appeared to be in a solid position to declare a win as more and more ballots appeared, often in tranches of tens of thousands that were 100% for Biden. That lead dissipated. It seems that unless an amazing statistical anomaly occurred in a handful of crucial states, over and over and over, extensive fraud took place. As this fight wears on, calls will increase for President Trump to concede and congratulate Biden on his win. He should resist any advice to do so. President Trump's election in 2016 represented a triumph of American spirit over the steadfast philosophy of internationalism. Open borders had encouraged untrammeled illegal immigration, supported by a cartel of business groups, Democrat political fixers, and America-hating leftists who all saw illegal immigration as a key component of their agenda. Manufacturing was sent overseas, and we were assured that American workers were not competitive and that the jobs were not coming back. We were embroiled in a never-ending series of senseless military conflicts for which no one involved could provide an answer to the question, what is our national interest? China spied on U.S. business, industry, and academia with impunity. American businesses readily gave trade secrets to Beijing as a price for access to the Chinese market. American tech companies worked hand in glove with Chinese security forces to suppress dissent and to slaughter ethnic minorities. Over and over, Americans and American interests were betrayed by a political, corporate, and cultural, thanks to that in Texas, and referring the comments for this edition. I do read the comments. Elites, over and over, we were assured that none of this could change. Under President Trump, we began to see what kind of pack of lies had been fed to us. We also saw the establishments of both parties join forces to stymie President Trump's efforts to carry out his agenda. Whether or not President Trump wins this election, he will have been the object of three separate soft coup attempts on the part of the deep state. Any concession of defeat by President Trump will be a betrayal of his 2016 election, of the people who supported and sustained them during his term in office, and of the nation conceding the election to Biden at any point will signal to the Democrats that the cheating will be rewarded by legitimacy. It will signal that this comedy between members of our political class is more important than issues or integrity. Worse than that, it will tell Republican voters that their votes don't count and that there is no one willing to fight for ballot integrity. By continuing the fight, President Trump will keep the issue of vote fraud before the American people. If he continues to make this a very public battle over the next 2 years, especially through the use of rallies, he can stoke enough anger and righteous resentment to limit the ability of our latest or latent quislings in the Senate to become overt collaborators with the Democrats, to make life tough for vulnerable House Democrats in following Pelosi's lead, and flip the House to the GOP in 2022. This public presence will keep the movement that he represented together, and either Trump or his designated successor, not some establishment drone, will be the odds on to defeat President Harris. Come on, do you really think Dementia Joe is going to be around in 4 years? In 2024? Who knows, maybe somewhere in the process, we'll develop a voting system that cannot be manipulated by Democrat machines. There is no downside in refusing to concede. Are the Democrats, the media, and cretins like the Lincoln Project going to suddenly like him and praise him? Will millions of disenfranchised Trump supporters regain their faith in the institutions that were behind this epic act of political larceny? Now, on the flip side, if he concedes, he will be remembered as a flash in the pan and may have two lasts associated with him: the last Republican president and the last free and fair election in American history. Now, that's an interesting statement right there. So we will definitely know just what'll come up. Interestingly enough, come January 20th, if there is no president or no vice president, the Constitution says that the Speaker of the House, which will be named on January 3rd, when the House is gaveled when the new Congress is gaveled into session. You know, it takes 218 votes to name a speaker, and we may not even have a Speaker. Pelosi. Got this from my good friends over at Legal Insurrection and Kimberly K. Does Pelosi have the votes to remain Speaker? Minority Leader McCarthy says probably not. To become Speaker, you have to have 218 votes on the floor. When Pelosi went up for that vote 2 years ago, there were 15 Democrats who voted against her. 10 of those Democrats will be coming to Congress. Those 10 vote against her again. She will not be Speaker of the House. Now, despite a failed impeachment bid and messaging that blew giant holes in Democrat majorities across the country, 80-year-old Nancy Pelosi is again vying for the gavel. With a dwindling House majority, Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says Pelosi might not have the votes. In a Newsmax feature Sunday, Representative McCarthy said to become Speaker, you have to have 218 votes on the floor. When Pelosi went up for that vote 2 years ago, there were 15 Democrats who voted against her. Now, 10 of those Democrats will be coming to Congress. If those 10 vote against her again, she will not be Speaker of the House. And in an interview with Fox News' Sunday Morning Features, McCarthy hailed GOP wins in the House and Senate. They said in the House, Republicans would lose 15 to 20 seats. Every pollster said that. Speaker Pelosi and House Majority Leader Representative Steny Hoyer, Democrat Maryland, they also said we would lose a Senate and legislatures as well. What happened? We didn't lose one incumbent. We won every seat except one open. We won 28 of the 29 most competitive seats. We didn't lose a Senate. We didn't lose control of any legislature. Actually, Republicans gained 3 new legislatures. And we've had the most competitive presidential race in our modern history. That's why every vote should be counted, every recount go forward, and every challenge should be heard, he said. Pelosi, he predicted, won't win back her speakership in January either. To become Speaker, you have to have 218 votes on the floor, he noted. When Pelosi went up for that vote 2 years ago, there were 15 Democrats who voted against her. Now, 10 of those Democrats will be coming to Congress. If those 10 vote against her again, she will not be Speaker of the House. We are close enough now that we can control the floor with a few Democrats joining with us, he declared, adding, I think it's better for America the sooner a Republican becomes Speaker. After devastating Democratic electoral losses, members of the House Democrat or members of the Democrat House Caucus in tears lamented how extreme messaging had cost them at the ballot box. Amazingly, Pelosi disagreed with the extent, and regardless of McCarthy's speculation, never count Pelosi out. That is a definite fact there. Definitely don't count Pelosi out because one never knows what'll happen. But January 3rd or hold on a minute, let me check the calendar here. January 3rd is on a Sunday, so probably January 4th, the Senate will be, or the new Congress will be sworn in. Right now there are 50 Republican senators. And so that should be interesting to see what happens in the Senate. In the House, on the other hand, you have, I think last count, 218 Democrats and about 206 or so Republicans. So it'll be interesting to find out what happens as far as Speaker of the House goes. And as always, I will be here to bring you updates. By the way, all of these news articles will be in the description below. And comment below what you think one Trump should do as far as conceding the election goes, and two, comment who you think should be Speaker of the House in January. The presidential race is still in litigation. However, it looks like that the House is going to be very contentious as far as the Speaker goes, and also the new members that are coming in. Let's start off with the top seat in the House, that being the Speaker. This coming from redstate.com. And it says, why Nancy Pelosi may have trouble remaining Speaker of the House. Where did her votes go? This by Shipwreck Crew. Earlier today, my Red State colleague Nick Armour reported that House GOP Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is speculating that Nancy Pelosi may no longer have the votes in the House Democrat caucus to remain Speaker of the House. A few days ago, when the late deciding House races decided to go against the Democrats, I wrote the story about the possible implications coming out of the House Democrat caucus conference call, where fingers of blame were being pointed over the losses that were suffered by various incumbents who had faced difficult races. The news had not improved for Pelosi since I wrote my earlier story. In fact, it has gotten worse in that the Democrats have now lost every close race called so far. It looks like she has lost, or will lose, 3 Democrat seats in California, her power base. With growing unhappiness on the extreme left wing of her caucus, the math might end up working against her in the coming vote of the House caucus on who to nominate for the Speaker's chair. If the remaining races end up as they currently appear on the NTY website, the Democrats will lose a total of 7 seats, and the new numbers in the next Congress will be 212 to 213. Remember from my previous article I wrote this. There were 205 Democrats in the 2002 House when the minority leader position opened with Gephardt's retirement. It would take 103 votes to claim the spot. Now, Pelosi used a pure brute force of the size of the Californian delegation, along with other Western states, to go into the contest with more than 60 votes already lined up. Warrior, being from Maryland, simply could not compete even with the backing of the East Coast and New England Democrat delegations in his corner. Pelosi prevailed to become the minority leader over Hoyer, who had been ahead of her in line. This was the first time a California House member became minority speaker or minority leader, and she later became speaker when the Democrats regained the House majority. During those years, Pelosi was a quote-unquote fire hose of campaign funds throughout the Democrat caucus, and no meaningful challenge has ever been raised against her. The challenge to Pelosi will come again from New England Democrats, led by the large New York delegation. The question has always been whether there will be a New York representative who has the ability to harness Wall Street money and media attention the same way that Pelosi has been able to harness Silicon Valley and Hollywood money. I noted in my earlier story that Hakeem Jeffries, currently the chair of the House Democrat Caucus, the number 4 leadership position, might just be that guy. In addition to McCarthy's comments, there have been rumors bouncing around on Twitter that Pelosi lacks the 112 votes she needs out of the 212 Democrats. Here are some aspects of last Tuesday's House races that might be coming into play on this issue. She's likely to lose 3 seats out of her California delegation. Really, that means that she's going to lose 3 votes out of the 112 she needs, which she received back in 2018. In addition, a 4th seat that was won by a Democrat in 2018, with that Democrat voting for Pelosi to be Speaker, was lost to the GOP following the resignation of Katie Hill, with her seat being won in a special election by the GOP candidate. So those are 4 votes she had in 2018 that she will not have this year. The California delegation only gives her 42 rather than 46 votes this year, if she holds them all, which she should. Arizona gives her another 4, Nevada another 3, and 2 in Hawaii. But some of the other far west states, Oregon, Washington, and Colorado in particular, are farther to the extreme left wing of the Democrat Party, and she is going to have to fight for those votes against that part of the Democrat Party caucus that is in line politically with AOC and the other socialists. Pelosi's number of solid core supporters in the House is probably in the range of 60 to 65, but the next 55 to 60 she needs will be tougher for her to get than has been the case in the past. Now, if you look at the rebel faction, New England and New York Democrats, there are now approximately 55 to 60 Democrat representatives from that region. If they get the more ultra-liberals in the Pacific Northwest states and Minnesota, their numbers probably approach 70. This alignment makes Florida, Illinois, and southern state Democrats the kingmakers, quote-unquote, in the caucus. There are 11 Democrats from Illinois, 13 from Florida, and 23 from the other southern states and Texas combined. That's a combined 47 votes, and both factions likely to vie for the speaker's chair reached within range of getting to 112 with another 40 plus votes. There is certainly a strong sentiment in the caucus that it is time for a generational change. If Biden wins the White House, the Democrat Party is going to be led by a 78-year-old president, an 80-year-old Pelosi, and a 69-year-old Schumer. The clock might be striking midnight for Pelosi's time as Speaker of the House. And that is so very true there, which is one reason why I myself might keep track of that come January 4th, 2021. So, and speaking of the House, here's a rundown of the seats that were flipped by the Democrats and the GOP on Election Day. This from thehill.com. Election Day is over and Democrats are projected to maintain control of the House, albeit with a smaller majority than before. Republicans have ousted at least 8 Democratic incumbents so far, with several more close races having yet to be called. Here's a rundown of the seats both parties flipped in this election. House Democrat incumbents who lost. Representative Harley Rauda of California 48th Congressional District Representative Debbie Mercousa Powell of the 26th Congressional District in Florida. Representative Donna Shalala, Florida 27th. Representative Abby Finkenauer, Iowa's 1st. Representative Colin Peterson, Minnesota 7th. Peterson was a little bit of a surprise because he was more or less like a moderate, you know, and we all know how how one Pelosi and two the the House Socialists, like the Squad, feel about moderates. You also the Democrats also lost a seat in New Mexico with Xochitl Torres Small. They also lost Representative Kendra Horn, Oklahoma's 5th District, Representative Joe Cunningham, South Carolina's 1st District. And there were no House Republican incumbents who lost. Now the open House seats picked up by Democrats, and they don't have the names on here, but the Democrats picked up Georgia's 7th District, which was represented by Congressman Rob Woodall, North Carolina's 2nd, which was held by Representative George Holding, North Carolina's 6th, which was held by Mark Walker, and actually it says here that Deborah Ross beat George Holding in North Carolina 2. Kathy Manning beat Mark Walker in North Carolina 6. And it doesn't say who won what all seat. Open house seats picked up by Republicans. Michigan's 3rd, represented by Justin Amash, who quit the Republican Party and became a Libertarian. Now for the pending races. California's 21st, represented by Republican T.J. Cox. California 25th, represented by Republican Mike Garcia. California 39th, represented by Democrat Gil Cisneros. Illinois 14th, represented by Democrat Lauren Underwood. Iowa 2nd is an open seat, represented by David Loebsack. Lee Zeldin, Republican, is New York 1. That's still up for grabs. David Loebsack it says that it's open. So yeah, David Loebsack, Democrat, that's an open seat. And Lee Zeldin, hold on a minute. Lee Zeldin, Republican, is in a tight race, as is the open New York 2nd, which was held by Representative Pete King, Republican. Democrat Max Rose represents New York 11th, which is up for grabs now. Sean Patrick Maloney, Democrat representative, New York 18. That's still up for debate. Sean Patrick Maloney, Democrat, New York 18, is up for debate. Antonio Delgado, Democrat, New York 19, is still up for grabs. Anthony Brindisi, Democrat, New York 22, that's up for grabs. And you have New York 24, represented by Republican John Katko. That's up for grabs. And it says here Representative Ben McAdams, Democrat of Utah's 4th District. It says that seat's still undecided, but from what I've been reading, Burgess Owens has that seat pretty much locked up. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of seats still up for grabs. Probably not enough for the Republicans to get to the 218, but still interesting nevertheless. And there are five new GOP members of the House that stand out. This comes from the Daily Signal. Conservatives won House races on Election Day, and many of these new members are expected to bring fresh perspectives to Capitol Hill as they represent millennials, minorities, the disabled, and immigrants, among others. Here are five of the House's incoming freshman Republicans. Number one, Kat Kamak, 3rd District of Florida. Kat Kamak defeated Democrat Adam Christensen to win Florida's 3rd Congressional District with 52% of the vote. Kamak, 32, is a former aide to Representative Ted Yoho, Republican Florida, having served as his chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, and campaign manager. She will now succeed Yoho, who is retiring after 4 terms. Born in Denver into a family of cattle ranchers, Kamak is a strong Second Amendment advocate and committed to supporting farmers and ranchers. The Congresswoman-elect completed her bachelor's degree at Metropolitan State University in Denver before earning a Master's of Science degree in National Defense and Strategic Studies at the Naval War College. Kamak says she became active in politics in 2011 after her family lost their ranch, which she blamed on the Obama administration's Home Affordable Modification Program, which is a program intended to help all homeowners refinance underwater mortgages. During her time working for Yoho, she established 4 new Veterans Affairs clinics in Florida, crafted Project Putnam, intended to improve the economic, social, educational, and overall development of Putnam County, and oversaw Yoho's North Central Florida Human Trafficking Task Force. Matt Harrison, Kamak's husband, is a firefighter and paramedic, and together they founded the Grit Foundation, a nonprofit supporting veterans, first responders, and law enforcement. Second is Madison Cawthorn, 11th District of North Carolina. He will become the youngest member of the Congress in modern history when he is sworn in January at the age of 25. He defeated Democrat candidate Morris Davis to win North Carolina's 11th Congressional District with 54.5% of the vote. Born and raised in the 11th District, which encompasses much of the westernmost part of the state, Cawthorn hoped to join the Navy and attend the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, to which Mark Meadows, former North Carolina congressman and current White House chief of staff, had nominated him. Cawthorn was forced to change his life plans when he sustained serious injuries in a car accident in the spring of 2014 that put him in the intensive care unit of a hospital for 5 weeks. Cawthorn's extensive injuries left him partially paralyzed and in a wheelchair. The young congressman-elect says he can relate to people who feel they, quote unquote, have been dealt a bad hand. And before working for Congress, he worked as staff assistant in Meadows' district office and attended Patrick Henry College in Purcellville, Virginia for a time. In 2019, he started his own real estate investment business. In a campaign video, Cawthorn said that as a millennial, he plans to bring a fresh perspective to Congress and is committed to saying no to high taxes and no to socialism. Number 3, Byron Donalds, 19th District of Florida, which covers Lee and Collier County, which is close to my district, but not quite. Anyway, Byron Donalds defeated his Democrat opponent Cindy Banyai in a landslide, capturing 61.3% of the vote in Florida's 19th Congressional District. On his website, Donalds 42 says he claims to be everything the fake news media say doesn't exist. A Trump-supporting, liberty-loving, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment black man. Donalds was raised by a single mother in Brooklyn, New York, and credits her for instilling in him a passion to leave future generations better than the current one. He settled in Florida after graduating from Florida State University in 2002 with degrees in finance and marketing. He worked in insurance, banking, and finance for a number of years in southwestern Florida and became politically involved in 2016 when he was elected to serve in the State House of Representatives. In 2017, he was named a champion of economic freedom by the nonprofit Americans for Prosperity. And in 2018, the American Conservative Union Foundation honored him with its award for conservative excellence. Donalds is chairman of the Insurance and Banking Subcommittee of the Florida House of Representatives. Criminal justice reform, education, and other affairs are three of the issues he has focused on during his time in the State House. The father of three sons, Donalds and wife Erica live in Naples, Florida. He has served as a youth leader in his church and serves as a volunteer coach for local youth basketball and football leagues. Donalds has received a 100% rating from Florida Right to Life. Number 4, Yvette Harrell, 2nd District of New Mexico. Yvette Harrell won the election in New York or New Mexico's 2nd Congressional District with 53.9% of the vote. With 95% of the vote reported, she is a New Mexico native and small business champion. Now, this was Harrell's 2nd congressional bid. In 2018, she was defeated by a Democrat, Social Torres Small, by a narrow margin of 3,800 votes out of more than 199,000 cast, according to ballotpedia.org. In the rematch, Harrell won the seat despite being outspent 3-1. Harrell, 56, has committed to take New Mexico's values to Congress and work across party lines, noting endorsements on her side from both former Democrat Rep. Harry Teague and former Republican Rep. Steve Pierce. Harrell, a Heritage Action for America Sentinel, served in New Mexico's House of Representatives from 2011 to 2019. As a member of the Cherokee Nation, she will be the 3rd Native American woman to serve in Congress, according to the Las Cruces Sun News. As an entrepreneur, real estate agent, and former small business owner, Hill says she is prepared to fight against big government overreach. In 2018, the Rio Grande Foundation's Freedom Index ranked her in 1st place for upholding principles of economic freedom among more than 100 political leaders in the state. Hill doesn't shy away from a discussion of the border wall and says she is committed to completing it and to standing with immigration and customs enforcement and border patrol agents. She also advocates for the growth of America's military and says New Mexico would be a quote-unquote ideal location for the military to develop its new Space Force branch. Number 5, Maria Elvira Salazar, 27th District of Florida. Congresswoman-elect Maria Elvira Salazar was born to immigrant parents who fled Cuba and came to America to escape Fidel Castro's dictatorship. Salazar, who turned 59 2 days before the election, grew up in Miami and Puerto Rico, where her parents instilled in her the value of freedom. She defeated Democrat freshman Rep. Donna Shalala in a rematch of the 2018 contest to win Florida's 27th Congressional District, capturing 51% of the vote. According to Miami's Channel 4, a CBS affiliate, Shalala served as Secretary of Health and Human Services for 8 years in the administration of then President Bill Clinton from 1993 to 2001. Salazar has lived the American dream, attending the University of Miami before going on to Harvard University to earn a master's degree in public administration. She has had a successful career as a journalist, becoming a prominent anchor for CNN Espanol, and later covering the Persian Gulf War and El Salvador Civil War, the latter for Univision. Salazar served as a Pentagon and White House correspondent for Univision for a number of years, before becoming the bureau chief for its Central America division. As a senior political correspondent for Telemundo in Cuba, Salazar interviewed Castro at the Cuban mission to the United Nations in 1995. The winner of 5 Broadcasting Emmy Awards, Salazar has been praised for her passion for freedom and uncovering oppressive, communist, and socialist regimes in Latin America, especially in Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, as noted on her website. Salazar, who has 2 daughters and lives in Miami with her husband, is a staunch anti-socialist, writing on her website, "Socialism isn't a romantic ideal as those on the left want us to believe. She promises to fight so everyone can pursue the American dream. And those are the 5 new GOP members coming up, and we have many more in there. I'm sure that as the weeks go on, I'll find more and probably tell you about them. But another interesting story that I had found today is a report that Trump is planning to quote unquote wreck Fox News by starting a new digital media outlet. You know, which I think might could be interesting. This coming from our good friends over at Hot Air. Report Trump planning to wreck Fox News by starting new digital media outlet. This by Allah Pundit. Sources have been whispering to reporters for more than a week about Trump wanting to build a competitor to Fox after leaving office. This story ran on the morning of Election Day before Fox committed the ultimate betrayal by calling Arizona for Joe Biden that evening. My guess is that the chatter about a Trump news outlet ever since has been mostly a matter of confidants trying to talk him into relinquishing power before things get ugly. Wouldn't it be nice to leave all this behind and have your own media outlet, sir? You could take your hurt feelings over the election out on Fox by making its programming only 97% pro-Trump instead of the full 100. As I write this, the president is retweeting dozens of people complaining about Fox and promising a switch to Newsmax, which I suppose represents progress relative to him tweeting about the election having been stolen. Here's a taste. This from Boobers B on Twitter. No doubt, Fox News ran 24/7 in our home for the past 7 years. It has not been on the past 7 days straight. Newsmax is where we go all. Fox is all about celebrity-like journalism, and everyone has a book. Shakes my head. D. Knoll, aka Give Him Six, said, like it or not, Fox News tried to persuade an election. Whether they did or not, I don't know, but the intent was definitely there. I'll never watch the channel again. Michael Stout says, I've been a loyal Fox News viewer for many years until now. Tucker, Hannity, and Laura should leave while they can. Fox is pandering to left now, and it's obvious. Now, Newsmax shouldn't get too excited. Why? Because according to Axios, Trump really does have plans for his own venture. President Trump has told friends that he wants to start a digital media company to clobber Fox News and undermine the conservative-friendly network, sources tell Axios. He plans to wreck Fox, no doubt about it, said a source with detailed knowledge of Trump's intentions. Trump is considering a digital media channel that would stream online, which would be cheaper and quicker to start. Trump's digital offering would likely charge a monthly fee to MAGA fans. Many of Fox News viewers, and he'd aim to replace the network and the $5.99 a month Fox Nation streaming service, which has an 85% conversion rate from free trials to paid subscribers, as their top destination. Launching on cable television would be expensive, launching online much less so, and Axios notes that an online venture could leverage the gigantic email list that Trump's campaign harvested from its donors. If you can't cope with the reality in which Joe Biden is actually the duly elected president, a reality already acknowledged by Fox News, well, good news. Soon you won't need to. Trump TV will be there to get you through the day. I have mixed feelings. On the one hand, the Trump network is destined to be nasty, conspiratorial, even rebellion in some of its programming, like its founder. It will accelerate the country's ongoing civic deterioration, and not just on its own airwaves, or broadband, I guess I should say. Fox will inevitably feel itself dragged towards nastier, more conspiratorial content, to try to keep pace and not hemorrhage viewers. On Trump TV, a Trump-backed candidate will never fairly lose an election to a Democrat. Fox will need to reckon with that. But on the other hand, this is so richly deserved, as coming out, as a tweet by Sarah Longwell says, Donald Trump's going to destroy Fox News as a competitor. Donald Trump's going to run for president in 2024, running out the ambitions of Nikki, Marco, Cotton et al. Trump's kids are trying to take over the RNC. Hope everyone is happy with their choices. I made the same point a few days ago about how enjoyable it is to watch the 2024 hopefuls in the Senate who toadied to Trump in hopes of ingratiating themselves with this coalition. Suddenly find that the personality cult they've enabled may lock them out of what they truly want. The Cruzes, Hollies, and Cottons of the world are facing the prospect of not being able to run for president in the next cycle. After all, forced to bend the knee once again to Trump, there's always 2028. But who knows how successful Trump TV might end up being in promoting Donald Trump Jr. or Tucker Carlson to the Republican base, making them a prohibitive frontrunner in future cycles. They all deserve this, just like Fox deserves to be swallowed up by Trump's media venture. Why, there's even a song about it. Of course, what people deserve and what's likely to happen are two different things. As Liam Donovan tweeted out, certainly some success with niche content, sports, etc. But in terms of politically oriented programming, I can only think of cautionary tales. Now, Fox isn't going bankrupt anytime soon, even if Trump allows or follows through on a digital programming network. But the next president at the center of an enormous personality cult should have an unusually good chance of making a digital platform viable, creating real competition for mainstream behemoths like FNC. We may not see a huge stampede away from Fox, but a dynamic where populist righties are watching it and Trump's network every day and making comparisons, which gets back to my point about Fox eventually being dragged toward a Trumpier note in its own coverage, although it wouldn't rule out a stampede either. Over the summer, when I started to keep an eye on Newsmax's Nielsen ratings, the network was averaging about 25,000 viewers at any given time, a tiny number by any TV news standard. As the election was approaching, the audience ticked up, but it was still just a fly on the fox elephant's back. In the final week of October, Newsmax was averaging just 65,000 viewers at any given time. Then came the election. Newsmax averaged 182,000 viewers during the election week that ended on Sunday, and it is growing even more this week. On Monday, the channel averaged 347,000 viewers. On Tuesday, 437,000 viewers. Everything, or evening shows like Spicer and Company and Greg Kelly Reports, are reaching 700 and 800,000 viewers. These shows struggled to hit 100,000 before the election. Something has changed. Fox lost viewers because it called the election for Biden that last weekend and called Arizona for Biden on election night, which, by the way, turned out to be correct. Decision Desk HQ projects Biden D as won the state of Arizona and its 11 electoral votes. Race called at 10:29 p.m. Eastern. This in a tweet from Decision Desk HQ. Now, it took 9 days for Decision Desk to feel confident about the outcome in Arizona, which strongly suggests that Fox's election night call really was reckless. But if you're a bottom line type of person, there's always a bottom line from DDHQ. Biden won Arizona, Fox was right. Even so, here's Trump's latest tweet as of this morning. Donald Trump tweeted out, Fox News daytime ratings have completely collapsed. Weekend daytime even worse. Very sad to watch this happen, but they forgot what made them successful, what got them there. They forgot the golden goose. The biggest difference between the 2016 election and 2020 was Fox News. I'm not sure what he means by the difference between the 2016 and 2020 election, since he wants the country to believe that he won both and actually got many more votes this time. He did, in fact, get many more votes this time. But it's nonetheless amazing to see his quest for election scapegoats lead him to knocking the biggest Trump propaganda arm in American media. For having failed him somehow, loyalty isn't enough. Absolute loyalty is what's demanded, and Fox failed to show that loyalty by having Democrats on as guests, correctly projecting Biden would win Arizona, not giving the golden goose enough praise and airtime, even though Fox's mega-rated primetime lineup might as well work at the White House in terms of their relentless messaging on his behalf. I don't know, but he'll be laying his golden egg somewhere else soon, it seems. Now, one thing that I find interesting about all that and everything is Andrew Breitbart had said that the new media is taking over where the old media had failed. And he said that back in 20, back about 2010, 2011 during the Tea Party. But I mean, we've seen a lot of new media, with Breitbart, with Newsmax, OAN, One American News Network, you know, you know, citizen journalists like myself here on my YouTube channel and also on my new media blog and Patriot Soapbox. So we've seen a lot of new media starting up. It'll be interesting to see just what the president does, and I'll keep you up to date. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one of the members of the squad, which was the incoming Democrat freshman back in 2018. There were four of them. There was Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Ariana Presley. Those four are the socialist wing of the Democrat Party. And it looks like there might be some dissension between her and a couple of people. Got this from the Epoch Times. And it says New York Democrat says AOC should not lecture parties on how to win elections. Moderate Democrats have last started the leftist progressive squad in their party for lecturing them on how to run election campaigns in their purple suburbs. New York's Democrat Party Chairman Jay Jacobs criticized Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat New York, for her comments about what her party could do to win more seats after disappointing results in key New York congressional and legislative districts. Jacobs said that Ocasio-Cortez, who represents portions of the Bronx and Queens in the 14th Congressional District, and other left-wingers could not win races in suburbs and places like Long Island and upstate. AOC has no standing on how to run a general election in the suburbs and upstate. AOC is in a district that is 6-1 Democrat, and she couldn't find a Republican in her district with binoculars, Jacobs told the Post. And it says, I invite AOC to come to Long Island and stand for election in one of our districts. You'll see different results, Jacobs said. Ocasio-Cortez advised the rest of the party on what they could do differently to win their districts, like her wing of the party, who easily won re-election to second terms, including returning Congress members Rashida Tlaib, Democrat Michigan, Ilhan Omar, Democrat Minnesota, Ayanna Presley, Democrat Massachusetts, and new members Cori Bush, Democrat Missouri, and Jamal Bowman, Democrat New York. Ocasio-Cortez told Jake Tapper of CNN that her party should seek advice from progressives instead of dismissing them. We can help. It's to say that we have assets to offer the party, which the party has not yet fully leaned into or exploited. Moderates like Representative Abigail Spanberger, Democrat Virginia, and Jacobs say that slogans within the party like defund the police cost Democrats in other areas their seats. The number one concern things that people brought to me in my district that I barely re-won was defunding the police, and I've heard from colleagues who have said, oh, that's the language of the streets, we should respect that. We're in Congress. We're professionals. We're supposed to talk about things in a way where we mean what we're talking about. If we don't mean we should defund the police, we shouldn't say that, Spanberger told colleagues in a November 5th call. President Trump and Republicans see the Democrats' desire to socialize healthcare, education, energy, housing, and defunding the police, etc., as socialist ideas and a threat to freedom with government overreach. But Democrats say the label has been used to scare voters and malign them. However, progressives like Ocasio-Cortez say they won their races because of their socialist agenda, including defund the police, her support for All Lives Black or for Black Lives Matter, the Green New Deal and Medicare for All, and say it is unfair of their party to blame them. Tlaib lashed out at centers over blame for election losses. I can't be silent. My residents walk by blighted homes, closed schools, and breathe in polluted air to vote for President-elect Joe Biden and VP-elect Kamala Harris. They don't deserve to be silenced. We must honor our communities that showed up. Hashtag embrace the base. Former Senator Heidi Camp, Democrat in North Dakota, cited some progressive ideas radical on ABC's This Week and said their ideas on climate change and energy does not sound sustainable to rural communities in her state. 65% of the people in North Dakota think climate change is a problem, she said. We're a big fossil state, we're a conservative state, but they see climate change as a problem. They get concerned when they see radical ideas being introduced to completely upend the energy system because that creates angst in their mind, both economically and in terms of cost of energy. There is a place that you can go in solving those problems that speak to all sides and does not radicalize important issues in this country. We saw that with the pandemic, which was incredible how masks got radicalized and politicized. We need to stop doing that, she added. Progressives are not saying leave people out, we're saying bring people in. But if parts of our party, which we bring home the bacon, as we did yesterday, call us radical like Republicans did, that's not the starting point of a good family conversation. Yvette Simpson, CEO of Progressive Action Committee Democracy for America, said in response to Heitkamp. Progressives got attacked by the Dems. Everyone silent. Progressives defend themselves in the Democrat base. Everyone stop being decisive or divisive. Maybe people should stop attacking progressives and work on unity instead of projecting. Representative Ilhan Omar wrote on November 8th. Freshman Congressman Jamal Bowman took to Twitter to defend the squad's agenda. Progressives organized with the Biden-Harris team all the way. We pushed the election to the top in cities like Detroit, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Atlanta. We will continue to champion policies our constituents need and are ready to enact a bold agenda with Biden and Harris, Bowman said. In response to attacks against her and the squad, Ocasio-Cortez said the party needs to unite against Republican attacks instead of blaming each other. And I believe that we need to really come together and not allow Republican narratives to tear us apart. You know, as you mentioned, when we have a slim Democrat majority, it's going to be more important than ever for us to work together and not fight each other. Now, I mean, I just see a lot of infighting, and that is just going to turn around and bite them in the butt, as we've seen with one Democrat senator, as a matter of fact. I got this from Town Hall. The title is "Will Joe Manchin Finally Switch Parties?" After this tweet from AOC by Katie Pavlich. During a recent interview on Fox News, West Virginia's Democrat Senator Joe Manchin vowed to hold the line against the far left in the Senate should his party become the majority. Senator Manchin tweeted out, "Watch. Many Americans have been led to believe that the Democrat Party is a party of socialism, the Green New Deal, and Medicare for all, and that's absolutely not who we are. The falsehood has scared the bejesus out of people. Do not believe these Republican scare tactics." He reiterated his stance to the Washington Examiner. "I really think that when you break the filibuster, you break the Senate, and I'm not going to be part of breaking the Senate. I can tell you that," he said. "The Senate is a pretty special place because the founding fathers intended it to be that way, but they also intended us to work in a bipartisan way and to where the minority always had input. You break the rules of the filibuster, the minority has nothing. There's no purpose whatsoever. You're no different than a glorified house. Hell, we're not able to carry care of the Medicare for some that have written it." I said, "Christ, you want Medicare for all? You better take care of the sum you already owe it to. Defund the police? Defund my butt. I'm a proud West Virginia Democrat. We are the party of working men and women. We want to protect Americans' jobs and healthcare. We do not have some crazy socialist idea, and we do not believe in defunding the police. That was a tweet on Veterans Day. But these far left policy positions aren't Democrat or aren't Republican scare tactics, as Manchin is also trying to claim. They're the reality in which many in the Democrat Party are based. Socialist Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has been fighting with Democrats over recent and significant seat losses to Republicans, proved it with this response. And there's a tweet that let me pull it up here. And yeah, so I mean, basically it's the it's the moderate Republic or moderate Democrats that are being edged out by the Democrats and or by the socialist Democrats, and I mean it's just basically infighting and whatnot. Here's a tweet from AOC. Apparently, it didn't show up in the when I clicked on the when I clicked out of reader mode, so you'll see it firsthand here as it pops up. Wait a minute. Yeah, it's yeah. You can tell that in this picture, AOC is just staring daggers into Joe Manchin into the back of Joe Manchin's head. But yeah, I mean, the left is the far left is just being too radical, and that's not what America is. I mean, you know, America's soldiers had fought against socialism during World War II and the Cold War. As a matter of fact, pilgrims, and I might go into it some next week or or the week before or or in 2 weeks. I mean, the pilgrims who came over from England tried socialism for 1 year. It did not work. So they went back to good old communism. And we have and while AOC is dominating the news, we do have other news as well. People are saying President-elect Joe Biden, and there is actually, let's see what the law has to say about it. This coming from an article from Front Page Mag, which is David Horowitz's column, focusing on the radical left and Islamic terrorism. The law is there is no presidential transition until Congress certifies the election, by Daniel Greenfield. Even though the votes are still being counted, Joe Biden declared that he is the president-elect, a shadow government office invented by Obama and invested with a pseudo-government seal, and he's been holding fake briefings and taking phone calls with foreign leaders. The United States only has one president at a time. Maintaining a fake shadow presidency undermines the sitting administration to the American people and foreign governments. It's illegal and inappropriate, so the Democrats are doing it anyway. Incoming presidents since Truman's day receive briefings, and since Kennedy's day get funding for their transition teams, but according to the law, only once it's clear who's won. This time, or the last time this happened, the Bush transition was blocked by Democrats until December. But the media is boosting its Biden cable network coup by threatening the head of the GSA. A week after the election, the media descended on Emily Murphy, the head of the General Services Administration, demanding that she release funds for Biden transition. Media hit pieces like the New York Times is how Emily Murphy stands between Biden's team, Bloomberg's, who is the GSA's Emily Murphy, Trump appointee holding up Biden transition, and the Washington Post, Trump appointee at GSA declines to sign letter authorizing Biden transition, personalized the issue and set off a lynch mob swiftly leading to threats against her. It's still early in November. The media conveniently forgot the time its party blocked the presidential transition for over 4 weeks, not just through November, but into December. David Barham, a top Clinton donor who supported every one of their campaigns since 1992, and target industry figure who had been appointed to head the GSA, did not get this kind of treatment when he turned down transition funding to the Bush-Cheney campaign after the 2000 election. Now, not only did Barron block funding until Florida's vote was certified, but he kept blocking it until the Supreme Court had made its decision, leaving very little time for any transition to happen. The Bush-Cheney campaign pursued its own privately funded transition, as did Al Gore, the way presidential transitions used to work until the Presidential Transition Act changed all that. Now, despite all this, Barron was never publicly attacked or threatened the way that Murphy is. Whereas still, the media recently trotted out Barron to argue that the GSA should release transition funding to the Biden-Harris campaign. First off, all these media outlets who call the election have called it for Joe Biden. I think the winner is perfectly clear, Barron recently insisted. Media outlets, it goes without saying, but no longer does, don't pick presidents. But as with so much else, the same media that amplified claims that Gore was withdrawn on in Florida, that Secretary of State Katherine Harris discriminated against minorities, and that Jeb Bush had rigged the election for his brother, now yells that such claims are not only false but dangerous and must be censored at all costs. The media that had allowed every Democrat to hold forth about the president or about the Florida election will now even allow won't even allow Republicans to speak. Democrat claims of election fraud must be heard, but Republican claims are disinformation. Even while the Washington Post warns Republican claims of election fraud are dangerous, it just ran an article suggesting that Harris rigged the 2000 election to win an ambassadorship. It's dangerously irresponsible for Republicans to cast doubt on an election result, but not for Democrats. And it's also dangerous for Republicans, but not Democrats, to block a transition. And yet the arguments that Barron made to block GSA funds back then hold up well today. With legal action being pursued by both sides, it is not apparent to me who the winner is, Barron had argued. Until the results are clear, and as long as both sides are going to court, the results are not clear yet. GSA spokeswoman Beth Neuberger had insisted. The legal standard for authorizing a GSA transition is, in the words of the Democrats, the end of legal action over the results of the election. As long as legal action is being pursued, including a trip to the Supreme Court, the GSA cannot and should not release funds to a transition. In congressional testimony, Barham took it further and cited an authoritative Democrat source. Congress made it perfectly clear that if there is single quote-unquote any question of who the winner is, in a close contest, this determination should not be made, Barham pointed out. He then quoted Representative Dante Fasquelle, the sponsor of the Presidential Transition Act. Representative Fasquelle had stated that if the ambassador had any question in his mind, simply would not make any designation in order to make the services available as provided by the Act. If, as an intelligent human being, and he has a doubt, he would not act until a decision has been made in the Electoral College or in the Congress. Kennedy had recently won through Daley's voter fraud in Chicago, and after spending $360,000 on JFK's expenses, the Democrats wanted government funding for presidential transitions. They also wanted some assurance of getting government assistance from the administration of an opposing party, even though no such issues had come to date. Faskel's boundary went further than Barham's, with the cutoff being the Electoral College and congressional certification. That's an objective and solid constitutional standard, unlike the end of legal proceedings, let alone the cable news network election calls that are subjectively partisan. More importantly, these are the rules that Democrats, not Republicans, have made, and Democrats were happy to live by these rules in Bush v. Gore when they helped them. Now these same rules are suddenly oppressive, dangerous, corrupt, and treasonous. Much like casting doubt on the election results in 2000, 2004, and 2016 was patriotic, but casting doubts on the election results in 2008, 2012, and 2020 is deeply dangerous. Political factions can have different views, but they cannot be allowed to have different laws. That's called equality, not equity, before the law. The core crisis of political power is that Democrats only respect the law when it's in their favor and ignore it, attack it, or dismiss it when it isn't. A Democrat Senate blocking Bush's judicial nominees was a noble defense of civil rights, but a Republican Senate blocking Obama's judicial nominees was an attack on democracy. And then Democrat Senate members trying to block Trump's judicial nominees was once again noble. The legitimacy of the Senate as an institution, or the filibuster as a tactic, changes every time the Senate changes hands. Counting every legal vote was noble in Florida in 2000, but is a disgusting lowball tactic in Pennsylvania in 2020. Fighting the election results in the Supreme Court was in the highest traditions of our political system in 2000, but is an outrageous abuse 20 years later. It was appropriate for the GSA to block presidential transition funding in 2000, but doing so in 2020 may kill people, and the relevant GSA officials should be threatened and harassed. Living in a nation of laws means having to live with those laws. Harassing the head of the GSA is political intimidation and only highlights the fundamentally terroristic and abusive nature of the political coup that the Democrats are perpetrating. Representative Dante Faskel, the Democrat sponsor of the Presidential Transition Act, was quite clear about the GSA administrator not taking personal initiative in a disputed election. So was Bill Clinton's GSA boss. As long as a presidential election is being contested, there is no transition. That's not the law, it's the rules that Democrats made. Now they have to live by them. I mean, I see this often, I see many people say President-elect, President-elect George W. Bush in 2000, President-elect Barack Obama in 2008, and President-elect Donald Trump in 2016, as well as others. And I mean, I think that it's just a colorful name put out, just to make the winner of the election feel good. I mean, I don't know. I'll be looking into that a little bit more as time goes on, but yeah, there is no actual transition until Congress certifies the election. I mean, the winner of the election can get his team situated, but until the actual certification, there is no real transition made. And in other news, we have, yesterday I had mentioned the fact that President Trump might make his own digital media outlet after wrecking Fox News. Here's something from the Gateway Pundit on Fox News, and whether it's a 21st century media titan or 21st century media Titanic. And this by Larry Johnson over at the Gateway Pundit. Once a titan, now a Titanic. Just as the captain of the Titanic had gone down in history bearing a heavy share of the blame for that ship's fateful collision with a rogue iceberg on her maiden voyage, The Rupert Murdoch spawn are teeing themselves up as reckless buffoons who are driving a once thriving media property into a ratings collapse. Since Fox News fully unmasked itself as a new bastion of anti-Trump hatred on Election Day, Tuesday, November 3rd, its conservative base of viewers have fled Fox's daytime lineup. Fox News, like the Titanic, is sinking. If the Titanic had been the equivalent of Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity, it might have stayed afloat. These two are keeping Fox News from sinking into a well-deserved oblivion. I know that some of you reading this have given Fox a total boot. Others, however, are staying away from their daytime propaganda but still tuning in to Tucker and Sean. Take a look at the numbers for yourself. There's a ratings. I'm publishing the ratings from Adweek below, comparing Friday, August 28, 2020 to Wednesday, November 11, 2020. In August, Fox ruled the day over CNN and MSNBC with a quote-unquote total day number of 2,278,000. CNN and MSNBC combined had a total of 2,629,000. The picture is quite different today. Fox still won the day barely with 1,998,000, but CNN and MSNBC combined dwarfed Fox with 3,831,000. Fox had gone from having almost as many viewers as CNN and MSNBC combined to now being half the number that its competitors are drawing. That is a shrinking audience. Just look at the specific shows. Neil Cavuto, who stupidly cut away from the president's press secretary, has shed almost 200,000 viewers. The Five with the intolerable Juan Williams lost almost 600,000. Brett Baer is not doing much better. He has 330,000 fewer viewers. Martha McCallum's 7 p.m. show fell by 400,000 fans. Laura Ingraham, who is still pushing back against Fox's shift to the left, still lost 491,000 viewers compared to August. Last and also hemorrhaging is Shannon Bream. She's down by 450,000 watchers. Those are significant numbers and should worry any news executive keen on putting butts in seats and eyes on screens. Now for the good news for Fox. Tucker and Sean are still crushing it. Tucker exceeded his August numbers by a monster increase, just shy of 400,000. Similar numbers for Sean. He's up by a whopping 505,000 over August. The Murdoch children, with the help of Rhino Paul Ryan, are trying to push Fox into the hate Trump camp. This is a stupid, short-sighted move. The conservative core that was once a dependable constant undergirding Fox's cable news supremacy, but those conservatives justifiably feel like the husband who has walked in on his wife who is copulating with his boss. That is a betrayal not easily or quickly forgiven. It remains to be seen how long Tucker and Sean will be able to push back against the ideological shift to the left at Fox. Meanwhile, other news outlets, that being Newsmax, One American News, and The Blaze, are gathering new viewers, which translate into new revenue streams. The left may want to crush the right, but their ham-handed moves appear to be breathing new life into alternatives in cable and social media. Let freedom reign. And there's a list from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. Friday, August 28, 2020. Total viewers, live plus SD times 1,000. Total day, Fox News Channel 2.278, CNN 1.076, MSNBC 1.503. That's total day. In the prime, Fox is in primetime. Fox is 3.915, CNN 1.363, MSNBC 2.240. At 4 p.m. you had Cavuto. The numbers are here, so you can look it up. Now compare those total day and prime numbers to Wednesday, November 11. Total viewers, that being live plus SD times 1,000. Total day, Fox News Channel 1.998, CNN 1.903, MSNBC 1.930, Primetime Fox News Channel 4.051, CNN 2.639, MSNBC 2.773. And there you see the numbers that for Fox, CNN, and MSNBC together. Now, there are a whole lot of alternative media outlets. You know, some mentioned there were the Blaze, Newsmax, One American News Network. Another good one is Right Side Broadcasting. You know, I mean, like I said yesterday, Andrew Breitbart said that the new media is taking over where the old media failed, and we're seeing it right here, and possibly including Fox now as the legacy mainstream media. You know, so things are really ramping up both politically and in the media field. And let me know in the comments what your favorite media outlet is, and also just what you think is is happening with the media. And I'll see you I'll see you in the next video. And that's going to do it for the news for this week. I am Mick Bulow. Again, if you like what you watch, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. Also subscribe and tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell an enemy or two even. And I will be back next week. Until next time, peace.